Welcome to Rev Up Your Business with Hilda Gann. We are now in season 5, and we've changed the name and the focus of the podcast. Rev Up Your Business is the podcast for small to medium-sized business owners, entrepreneurs, and HR professionals. Each week, we share tips, strategies, and trends on how you can build success in your business. I share my expertise as a people-centric leader in work culture and human resources. My guests share their expertise in human resources, marketing, sales, finance, IT, leadership, and the multiple facets that you need to take care of your business. If you love to learn and want to find out how you can rev up your business, join us. Welcome to another episode of Rev Up Your Business. Today we're going to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I have as my guest Leigh Mitchell. Leigh Mitchell is identified by Stats Canada as one of the leading experts in DEI. And I'll do a formal introduction. We're going to talk about DEI today and talk about some of the upcoming legislation that's going to have an impact on diversity and inclusion. And that is, number one, the disclosure of salaries when you're considering a job. And the second one is that Canadian experience can no longer be a requirement for a job posting. So two very interesting aspects. It's going to change the way we connect with potential employees. So welcome, Leigh.
Thanks for having me. This is wonderful. Such important things to be talking about today. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
I am too. And I want to give you a formal introduction now. So thank you for joining me today. Let me tell you a little bit about Leigh. Leigh Mitchell is a gender equality advisor. She works for York University and the University of Guelph Humber. She is the founder of Be Happy HR and Mindfulness Company, and the founder of Women in Biz Network. Leigh has worked with brands such as Microsoft, Sage, TELUS, TD Canada Trust, Staples, and Chevrolet Canada throughout her career. She's been featured in CBC News, The Globe and Mail, Toronto Star, Canada Living, Wall Street Journal, and has spoken on numerous industry events. Be Happy HR has been recognized as number 15 in the top 60 HR blogs or businesses in Canada. As I mentioned, she is identified by Stats Canada's Centre for Gender Diversity Inclusion Statistics as one of the subject matter experts in the field. Amazing, amazing. And what she loves to do is create these Be Happy Mindfulness programs that integrate social, emotional skills into sport, education, workplaces, using secular and mindful-based practices, including customized programs with the Jays Care Foundation, YMCA, PDSB, and the TDSB. Welcome, 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 Leigh.
Oh, this is great. I'm really looking forward to jumping into all of these really important topics today.
You are such a passionate person. We've known each other for a long time, and you have causes that really support women, support gender equity. Tell me more.
Yeah, well, I started Women in Biz Network, my first business, over 12 years ago. I had left my workplace because I was raising 2 young children. My husband was traveling all over the world, and I really had a passion for wanting to work with women, and I had kind of had some challenging situations in my workplace, just navigating being on maternity leave and negotiating flexible work arrangements. So this became a really interesting and more of an important topic for me to take on and to really be an advocate for, because I really didn't feel like I had the support of my workplace when I was trying to navigate the transitions of coming back into the workplace after being on maternity leave for close to 2 years because of some health related issues as well. So it felt like a totally new world for me after leaving the workplace and then coming back. And so I decided to leave corporate life and to start Women in Biz Network in order to give women a voice in their workplaces, as well as in small business. And so throughout the years, we have focused on putting on conferences and events that help to provide the support that women need in issues related to navigating the workplace, as well as starting up businesses and excelling in business. And in addition to that, we also launched a career board for women, and I work with employers to help them to really rev up, I'll use your words, rev up their hiring practices so that they can attract and have women stay in their workplaces, because a lot of women feel isolated in the workplace and they don't feel like they belong. So I really wanted to help employers realize the things that were keeping women from wanting to stay in their companies that they worked for. And also, the other major issue I found was the pandemic really set women back, so much so that it's going to take pay equity is being an issue for women throughout the history of the world. But we really had a challenge during the pandemic, and it set it back a considerable amount. So, we provided free career coaching for women to help them get strategic about their job search and to figure out how they could re-enter the workplace. So we went on a bit of a media tour where we're able to support women by sharing with the media some of the challenges that they were experiencing throughout the pandemic, and to help them to reintegrate into the workplace again. So, yeah, it's been a really fulfilling career and journey in the last about 12 years since I started doing this type of work.
So thanks for sharing all of that. Your passion comes through, and your desire to help women. And I think that started when I first knew you. I don't even know how long ago it was, like at least 7, maybe 10 years ago. And you started a women's network group, Women in Business. So do you want to talk about that a little bit first?
Yeah, well, I vividly remember meeting you. It was at the Spoke Club. It was our summer social, and we got together to talk about how to pitch your business, and just gave women an open mic to be able to talk about what they were doing and help them to refine their pitch. So I recall you speaking about your business. You were really new, starting up a new business, and you joined Women in Biz Network. And at that point, we had developed a mentorship program. So we helped women by matching them with mentors, and we also did mentorship where it doesn't necessarily mean one person is older and helping the younger person. Like, there's cross transfer of skill sets between women. So someone who is starting out could mentor a woman who's been in business or in their career for a long time. It's a matter of we all have different skill sets and strengths, and so really wanting to help women support each other. So it's like women supporting women. And then we developed an advisory board, which you joined, and you were our human resources advisor for quite some time, which was really wonderful. You're a giving person and really appreciated all you've done to support Women in Biz Network. And then I transitioned into Be Happy HR because I was finding through the career board that we launched and are consulting with employers that were looking to be more to create diversity, inclusion, and belonging in workplaces, specifically with the gender lens. We felt that it made sense to create an arm that focuses on DEIB in workplaces for human, with the human resources as our industry focus. So my business has transitioned throughout the years, and most recently getting into social and emotional learning and putting on workshops and conferences and customized programs to support, just living with more intention. And I think that in diversity and inclusion, intention and optimism and awareness is so important in workplaces. So being able to share that those important skills has been really rewarding. And and I guess it's yes, my third iteration of business.
What I find like interesting now, and people are listening more so to providing wellness programs in their organizations and supporting people who want to take the time to, stay healthy. And I think
Mhm,
COVID did that for us. COVID
mhm,
really, sent us packing into our homes and
mhm.
working from home. And suddenly people started to, in their spare time, find passions and realize that what I'm doing at work may not be what I love to do. And some people switch because of that. And I think people gain the courage to try new things or to try to move on to places where they found their passion. What was your observations about COVID and the impact that that's had on intention, as you call it?
Yeah, well, I think everybody wants to live with purpose. I think that's an important, like, and feeling a sense of belonging. And mindfulness is about living in the present moment and fully embracing your life as it is. And there's never been a time in our lives right now that we don't have control over what's happening around us, but we do have control over how we respond to situations. And so I found my anxiety was through the roof during the pandemic. So I turned to mindfulness and meditation in order to really calm and soothe my nervous system, and it really helped. And so I got involved with two other women, and we developed this new section of our business, mindfulness, and it really works in human resources and in companies, because I think that people in general really want to feel like they're heard. And part of mindfulness is really listening and being fully present. So I think those skills go hand in hand with creating a good culture in your community or your business or workplace.
So for those of people who are listening and say, yeah, I've heard about mindfulness for so many years, right? I mean, when I think 5 years ago, when people said, "Oh, I do mindfulness training," and I'm going, "Oh, right, yeah, you do," and then go, but now people get it. People understand. And I think it took us to get through COVID to see why we need to be present, why we need to make sure our stress levels are at this manageable side. I remember in the early days of COVID, I was like a cheerleader. I was being really positive myself, and I would talk to each of my children with understanding their unique needs and what their stressors might be, and chatting with my staff and saying, how are you doing? How are things? And I after about 2 years of that, I started to be a little bit more neutral. But I think
Mm.
I think nowadays people understand mindfulness and the value of it. Could you give some tips or strategies for those who still aren't quite comfortable with using mindfulness in the workplace? What would you advise people who are listening about that?
Yeah, well, there's a psychiatrist and psychologist, or sorry, she's a psychologist, not a psychiatrist. So she's a psychologist. Her name's Shauna Shapiro, and she has proven through research that it literally changes your brain chemistry, mindfulness. So we age better. We are able to like have more energy. So that would really, I think, like just essentially just helps with our ability to cope with everyday pressures. And so, one of the things that's really important is to realize that mindfulness isn't about like, oh, la la la, and that, everything's wonderful. It's about being able to cope with your feelings and realizing that feelings are just feelings and that they don't necessarily equate to um, reality, right? So it just means that we all experience doubt, anger, frustration, and so with mindfulness, we just realize that we just label those feelings, right? So like, right now, nervousness, right? We're on a podcast here. I'm feeling probably a little bit nervous, wanting to make sure that I come across the way I intend to, with my intention to provide value. Um, but, I think that the important thing about mindfulness in the workplace is that it just allows you to be your full self and realize that the doubts that we feel are not anything that we need to be concerned about, in that we can understand that we're going to experience a variety of different emotions and life is like a roller coaster. But mindfulness helps us to just to accept, to label, and to move on with how we are coping. So in the workplace, it's incredible because it allows us to just realize that just because someone is saying something to me that maybe I don't like, I don't have to react to that. I can take time to reflect and respond. So I think mindfulness allows us to control our reactions and just allow ourselves to. It's not that we have to suppress anything. It just means that we can like hear a difficult comment, or perhaps something that you perceive as a criticism, and go, oh, okay, I hear what's being said to me, but I don't have to internalize it. They're having a thought and a feeling, and I'm having a thought and a feeling, but I can take my time to mindfully decide what type of action I want to take. And so I find that it just allows you to be less reactive. And as a manager, it just allows you to have a greater sense of calmness in dealing with everyday stressors and leadership challenges that we have. So it's really changed my life. I just cope with everyday work and life situations more productively.
I like somebody who said, just let it roll off your shoulder rather than carry it on your shoulder. Let's just let it
Exactly.
roll off your shoulder.
Yeah.
Many companies, particularly larger corporations and organizations, have, embraced DEI in the sense that they form a committee, they find some champions,
Mhm.
they create the strategies, but it doesn't get down to the practical aspect. And you and I talk about this, and how my Rev Up program, for example, takes the DEI and puts it into practice at the staff level. I remember there was Gay Pride Week coming up, and there was a chat box with my fellow HR people, and some people said, so what are you doing for Gay Pride Week? And somebody says, we're going to bake cookies. And I'm going, this is not integration. These are little events. You
Mhm.
really need to help people weave diversity and inclusion and equity into the day-to-day working together. So I
Mhm.
mean, I can just remember that and thinking we've got a ways to go, and certainly my programs help with the integration piece and with the
Mhm.
conversations to create that sense of belonging, that sense of inclusion. What kind of tips and strategies, Leigh, do you have for those of my viewers and listeners who are thinking,
Mhm.
so yeah, you're right, Hilda, we've done it at this higher level, creating planning, but we don't know how to make it woven into the day-to-day fabric.
Yeah. Well, I think that's where mindfulness comes into play. It's about listening, right? how many times have you entered into a conversation and you're just kind of waiting for your turn to say, you maybe not even fully listening to the person because you're getting ready to like say that
Yeah,
amazing
you
idea
prepared your
you have
answer.
in your, yeah. So, I think that it starts with listening. It starts with keeping an open mind, and and taking action in, like you said, everyday moments, and really not jumping ahead and thinking that we know what someone else needs. So it really starts with listening and seeing how the best practices that are out there. Like, I mean, anybody can like practically use ChatGPT to create a program within 2 seconds that focuses on DEIB initiatives. And I really think that it comes down to really trying to embody the core values that your organization is focused on, and to not tokenize our work. That I think that's really important, and not to make assumptions. I think that unconscious bias is a huge challenge, and sometimes people think, oh well, I know about this race, or I know about, and I mean, right now it's really sad, the racism that's happening in the world right now. I know that we were dealing with Asian hate and things related to that during COVID, and now there's so much hate in because of the war in Israel. And so I think we jump to conclusions about what people are thinking, feeling, and doing, and then we put our own spin on that, and we can really get ourselves angry, as opposed to just taking a step back and just being more thoughtful in our approach. And also, I think that it's something that we have to work on in a continued basis, and continue to check in to see how things are going. Like, did that initiative come across the way we intended it to? So, I think we have to look at talking to our teams and finding out whether the things that we're trying to accomplish are actually having that impact, or are they having the opposite impact where it feels like it's lip service.
Yeah.
So,
And,
I think that that's really important.
and I mean, you're right. Listening is such a key, and in the listening, not prepare for your response,
Yeah.
but to really understand where that person's coming from. Because the more we learn about each other, the more we understand. And unconscious bias, really, I know we all do it, and it is. We get so inundated with so much information. We need to create patterns,
Mhm,
stereotypes, if you want to call it, but
mhm,
don't let that be that guiding factor, right?
mhm,
And learn to change those groupings in your mind in a much more positive way than a hateful way. Because I think
mhm,
some of the tensions in the world from the wars that experienced the Asian hate are
mhm.
from the negative perceptions of stereotyping rather than the positive perceptions. I just did a post the other day on, I called it Least We Forget the Tale of Two Uncles. And it
Mm.
shared the fact that there were two uncles, one real, one not real in my mind, but both of them fought in World War II.
Mm.
And they fought for Canada, but they also fought for the right to vote. The right to
Mm.
vote as a Chinese Canadian. This is 1940, and
Yeah.
Canadians got emancipated in 1947. So I wanted that post to be about Remembrance Day. I lost one of those uncles this year, and he was 99. So he's not my true uncle, but he's a friend, uncle of a friend that I'd known. So, I mean, this is the kind of thing that if we understand more, we learn to have more empathy and understanding of each other. I didn't even know, and I like to stay abreast of the Chinese and the Chinese in Canada. I didn't even know until recently that there were Chinese who fought in World War One for Canada as well. Like that just blows my mind that even
Yeah.
happened in World War One. I knew about World War Two, but I didn't know about World War One. So the more we learn about each other, the more we begin to understand each other. And that's my rev up thing, right? Treat people
Yeah.
with respect and treat them as equals. And listening is learning about other people.
Yeah, and I think even with strengths as well, I think sometimes we think, oh, if you're Asian, you're super smart, you're like really, everything's like there. So,
Yeah, there's
can
stereotypes.
be that can be, I guess, maybe an advantage in some ways, but in some, if you really if you're someone who's Asian and you struggle in school, then what is that? Is that unconscious bias going to create, you know, uh, a negative stereotype for the child that's really feeling a challenge? Or with, if you're a person of color and there's like, a stereotype, oh, well, you must play basketball, or, things like that, right? So,
Yeah,
we make assumptions, both positive or negative, about people, but we're it's based off of thinking that we know people, when we should be asking thoughtful questions, as opposed to just assuming that we know
exactly.
their
Yeah.
strengths or their weaknesses.
When my husband and I had our engineering company, I would talk to the staff, and one of them, he had his master's in engineering, and he said, when I went to school, Hilda, my guidance counselor in high school said, "Oh, you shouldn't be going to university. Go to a college and get your engineering technology, thing." He thought,
Mm,
"I'm going to university. I want to get a degree." And then he went on to get an MBA. And then his story is, so, you know, I wish I could talk to that guidance counselor now and say, see what I did in spite of you. And how many
yeah.
guidance counselors thought they were doing people a favor? They were not looking at uniqueness
Hmm.
of people and really encouraging them onward. They were just using their unconscious bias to put somebody in a certain little pigeonhole kind of thing. Before we end, I wanted to talk about these two pieces of legislation, because I know you said, "Hey, Hilda, I want to talk about the new legislation." So this
Yes.
is not passed yet, but this is part of the ongoing Working for Workers Act in
Hmm.
Ontario. But this can apply to people anywhere in the world. This particular one is looking at disclosing salaries, so that companies will need to, when they do their postings, disclose salaries. And this obviously has implications. It's nothing new, because this was actually approved in a prior government, but when the newer government came on, they put it on the shelf. And so now they're putting it back into motion. Do you want to comment on it, Leigh?
Well, I mean, I've written about it. I've researched which provinces and which states have these laws, and it's so important to level up the playing field. It also is such a time waster for human resources professionals, as well as the candidates applying for work, if we don't know what the range is, right? Like, it's a complete time waster, but it also it creates more inequity in the workplace, because everyone feels nervous to say what they feel their value is.
Mm-hmm.
So they may underestimate it because they want to make sure that they're able to get that job. And women tend to, when we think about it from a women's perspective, women tend to underestimate their value. And if a woman is of color, it's even worse. So it's really important for equality in the workplace, but it's also just a humane and compassionate HR practice. One of the reasons why I wanted to get into human resources is because I wanted to put the human back into it. I we're all humans, right? Like, why would we put practices into place where essentially we're like we're spending, how much the average interview process that one goes through preparing for an interview, going through like at least probably several rounds of interviews, maybe also having to do a work assessment of some sort, right? It's just so time
Yeah.
consuming. And essentially it's like we're blindly going after something. So it's just it's a good if the, I'm really confident this will go through because there's been so much anger and frustration, especially from people who have been historically marginalized, that we're just not going to put up with it anymore. So employers that are following this, and even though they're not mandated to do it, but they're doing it already, those are the employers that I think are those early adopters that I'm so proud of,
Yeah.
that they're taking that step. And I really encourage, even if I can't get the employers that work on my like that submit to our job board, if they feel they cannot disclose salary ranges, I'm like, well, then tell me what the benefits are. Like, what's in it for the employee?
Yeah. Yeah.
So many job descriptions are so like paragraphs and paragraphs of verbiage about the company, and nothing about what's the value to the person that's going to be spending, you know, all of their blood, sweat, and tears trying to navigate their workplace. And nowadays work is stressful. So we're torn between managing our families. And at our age, we're really in that sandwich generation. So we have pressure from being parents, but also caregiving for our own parents.
Yeah.
So I really do feel that we need to create flexibility and promote the value that we're bringing to employees, because we dedicate our lives to our work, and it should be a win-win situation for workers and employers.
Yeah, I think it's going to, some companies will find it tough to be able to declare that, because when
Mhm.
they see so how much are you making? Oh,
Yeah,
we'll give you 10% more than you got now, right?
yeah,
Meanwhile, they know it's not even in their band. It's not even in their range. It's below their range. And I don't think that's a good practice to have, is to look at, so what are you making right now? We'll give you
yeah,
15% more. That is
yeah.
not the way. And of course, women tend to fall in that scheme. They'll continue to
Mhm.
fall behind the man who gets 20% every time he moves up, and this one only gets 10% every time they move up. So this is really going to level the playing field for sure. The other one that is part of the same, I guess, bill that they're going to be
Hmm.
presenting for discussion is the fact that they will require they will no longer be allowing employers to put in Canadian experience required, right?
Yeah.
And I think many of us have done that in the past, because we found that when people come and they have no Canadian experience, it really is, it is hard for companies. Um, but today it's different. And I know
Mhm.
it's different, but I'm going to let you comment on what your thoughts are about this new piece of legislation that's
Yeah.
proposed. That's proposed.
Yeah, proposed, yes, yeah. I work with international students at York University, and they're so courageous. They come here for a better life, and they're so driven, and they have great education. I mean, they learn, at least like a lot of my students come from India, that they're already learning English in like as soon as they start high school. They're fully taking all of their courses in English. So and we live in a global economy, right? So, so many jobs are
Yep.
virtual. So you could potentially be working with an international uh, community of workers. And so it's just, yeah, we have to change with the times. And, maybe many moons ago, it made sense to want to have Canadian experience, although still unfair. Now it just doesn't make any sense, because if you're doing marketing, like, just for example, I teach marketing. So it's like, if you're doing marketing, other than familiarizing yourself with laws that are specific to the country that you're working within, there's no difference between marketing globally, so, and most people focus in on a niche. And so you learn that niche. So yeah, I never understood that, and I'm really, really thrilled to hear that we're going to be moving towards this. I really hope it gets passed.
I totally get where you're coming from too, because, you know, 30, 40 years ago, when people came from another country, they really didn't understand their country. They didn't understand how that country operated. But we have been global since the turn of the century, at minimum, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
this is long overdue. When you have people that come with their creative ideas from their industry in their country, that can only stimulate suggestions, ideas of, does that work? Wow, that's a great idea. We should be doing that. And regardless of whether a person has Canadian experience or not Canadian experience, nowadays, you should embrace people's differences, their uniqueness, because each one of us creates a better whole solution than to have a homogeneous population that just continues to incrementally move the bar a little bit because they all think alike, they all have the same experience. So when you have diversity in gender, in culture, in geographical experience, where you got your university education, that host of things that make us different helps collectively build a stronger solution, a stronger business, because it's not static, it's not stayed, and it's not just focused on one way of thinking. So I totally embrace this idea. A long time coming, maybe made
Hmm.
sense decades ago. And I'll add one more thing, is that we
Hmm.
don't do a good job of onboarding our staff. And
Oh, yes.
regardless of whether I come from, South Africa,
Hmm.
or I come from the university, of York University,
Hmm.
I don't know your culture. I don't know how you do things here. And your onboarding should be teaching me, no matter where I've come from, no matter how many years of experience, let me know how I'm supposed to do things, and we can evolve from there. It doesn't mean we're going to continue to follow it that way. But now that I know and I'm onboarded, I can be much more productive, and I can share my creative ideas with you, knowing what you were doing here. But does this work? So to me, it's not about Canadian experience. It's about a lack of educating people to understand how we do things at our company, right? And onboarding. I love when people say, yeah, we onboard, we've got Bamboo HR and we can do it in 5 minutes. I said, that's not
Hmm.
onboarding. Or it is onboarding, but it's administrative work. Get
Yes.
my paycheck so I can get my paycheck cut and get my benefits started. And I know how much vacation I'm earning. That is not onboarding. That is
Yeah.
just the tip of the iceberg for
Yeah,
that.
exactly. No, I'm so glad that you mentioned that because it's really I think that's the training that we provide to our employers that we work with, the inclusive hiring practices. A big part of it is how do you keep that going so that you can retain those amazing people that you
Yep.
found, those
Yep.
diverse candidates that bring a wealth. And I mean, it's been proven that diversity grows business opportunities. It creates a
Oh,
more
yes.
healthy
Yep.
leadership culture, and companies that have a diverse um, executive board. It is just healthy, right? Because we don't all think and feel the same way. We need to have a collective opportunity to share from different perspectives because you want to represent the community that you're working within.
Mhm.
So that's really important. And so I really focused in our training to mention how do you keep that culture going so that it doesn't become like you're just doing it as a token. So
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
Hmm.
I know that you are passionate, you wanna spread the message. I know that we spoke, well, I wasn't officially speaking, but my content was speaking at the, Retail Council of Canada for the HR conference earlier this
Yes.
year, and it was wonderful to be able to send a message of diversity and how you can include, that in your work, culture. I know
Yeah. And because it's retail, it's so important because we do have such diverse voices, and that are coming to our workplaces. And yeah, so it was really well received, our content, including yours as well. And we had a lot of people download information about our how to put it into action. And yeah, it was, I met some really amazing employers. Arden, actually, the jewelry company, they have a really interesting mindfulness based program for their staff. So they embody mindfulness into their workplace. So that was really inspiring to me too. So yeah, we met some really incredible companies that attended the Retail Council of Canada's HR conference. So that was really rewarding to be a part of.
It's so important to send the message and exchange messages, because
Mhm.
we have the power, all of us, everybody who's listening, we have the power to make a difference in the workplace. And when you make one where people feel trusted and safe and connected, that just makes work life so much better, and
Mm.
can only help. So I applaud your work in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I love that Stats Canada recognizes you as an expert, and I'm happy to call you a colleague and a well-known a friend in this whole area. How do people get a hold of you, Leigh?
Yeah, so they can connect with me through our website, behappyhr.com. Also, I'm a big power user of LinkedIn, so anyone can connect with me by my name, Leigh Mitchell, and that's Leigh. I have the unique spelling of that. And there we have an inclusive hiring practices, some modules that we offer for a complimentary to employers that utilize our services. So if anyone's looking to, it's not about perfection, it's about progress. So if there's any companies out there that maybe don't have a DEI officer and could use some investigation about how their practices are coming across to their teams, myself and of course you are available to support that. I know we collaborate together, so yeah, check out our website for and also our career board on womeninbiznetwork.com to see our diversity driven career board for women. And I look forward to continuing to work with you, Hilda. And I thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I always get so much enjoyment out of our conversations. It's been wonderful.
I enjoy the thing that there are opportunities when we get to collaborate together. And for those of you who are listening, Be Happy is a BEE,
Yes, thank you for
not a
reminding
BE
them. Yeah.
or a BEA. It's a
Yeah.
BEE, Happy. And
Yes.
Lately spelled her the way she spells her name, Leigh.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Leigh, for joining us today.
Thank you.
And to those of you who are listening or viewing, if you loved this presentation, give it a thumbs up and do subscribe. There are so many people who I invite onto the show that will help you build your business success, whether you're in HR, whether you're an entrepreneur, or whether you're in the C-suite leading your business success. Join us and listen and learn tips and strategies from these experts. Thanks. Thank you for tuning in to Rev Up Your Business with Hilda Gann. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our podcast on YouTube and Spotify to stay up to date with all of our latest episodes. For more HR tips, strategies, and to learn how you can create a people-centric workplace, visit our website at peoplebrightconsulting.com.